Update. My male 27 wife, female 26, lost her job after leaving early numerous times out of concern for her friends, female 26. Mental health after her miscarriage. But when I tried to talk to her, she made me out to be the enemy. Original post. My wife and I have been married for 3 years, and we don't have any kids at the moment. We want to have kids in the near future, but as of right now, my wife is really struggling, and I don't know what to do to help her. My wife Liz has a best friend Lauren who she's known since high school, but ever since 2 years ago, Lauren has been going through a lot. Lauren had a miscarriage a couple of years back, and Liz told me that it was one of the things that led her to eventually divorce with her husband. Lauren was depressed for some time, and Liz would come over after work to comfort her and get her out of the home. And she even said that Nick, Lauren's husband, had asked her to do so too since Lauren wasn't being receptive to him. Nick would pay for activities for them to do, such as movies or concerts, and I would pay for some as well. I didn't know Lauren especially well, but after inviting them over for dinner a few times, I felt like I began to know them more too. But when Lauren would tell my wife about how Nick would try to offer to do things with her too, Lauren would usually refuse them and his suggestions to splurge on herself, to do her hair and make herself feel nice every once in a while. Liz tried to tell her that while she'll be there for her, that she should also confide in her husband to do things with him too, but she said that Lauren just felt guilty among other things. And there were a handful of fights that they had too. Fights where Lauren would tell Liz that she erupted at Nick for suggesting activities to her that she didn't want to do. Fights that Liz honestly felt that Lauren was in the wrong about, because she was constantly resenting him. One of the fights happened when Nick brought her flowers and offered to take her out to dinner for her birthday, only for Lauren to snap at him because she wasn't in the mood. When Liz asked if he had already purchased the reservation before asking her, she said that he didn't and that he should have known she wasn't in the mood, and she refused to take the flowers too. The other fight they had was about a vacation week that Nick was planning to use, but when he asked if she wanted to go, she gave him an attitude about not wanting to. So when he said that he would use the PTO later in the year once she was feeling up to it, she got on him for not asking his friends instead. But when he said that he wanted to spend it with her, she just went off at him and told Liz about it too. Fast forward some time and Lauren and Nick are no longer together. Lauren's condition has worsened, and it's taken a toll on my wife, who has continued to spend time with her after work. I'm all for supporting her friend, but I believe that there's a point when you must also prioritize yourself. And in the beginning, my wife would be tired after going straight from work to Lauren's to comfort her, both during the miscarriage and after their divorce. But now, as Lauren has continued to struggle more than a year after the miscarriage, and refused Liz's suggestion to try therapy, once with her husband and even after the divorce, Lauren has begun to make concerning statements about feeling like she might end it, and other stuff like that. And we were recently having lunch with another couple we know where Lauren texted her something similar, and Liz couldn't enjoy herself. I totally understand that. And on that day, she expressed that she needed to leave to make sure that Lauren was alright. And this was towards the first few times that Lauren began saying that. However, while driving away, Liz called Lauren, who then said she didn't mean it. And Liz was somehow able to make her feel better on the phone to the point where it was unnecessary for her to come over anymore. So, while I was relieved, but not completely convinced that she was fine, I told Liz that maybe she should go over just to make sure. But Liz said it was fine, and I trusted her with that since she knows her better. However, I also told her that while Lauren is her friend, she can't let her weigh her down when she's enjoying herself. Like at lunch or other times we had plans and sacrificed them to be there for Lauren. And that if Lauren refuses to get help time and time again, there's only so much you can do, and you still have to live your life. And while she said that she agreed at the moment, it's gotten a lot worse the past few weeks at work, to the point where she lost her job, and I'll try to explain why. Ever since the day when Lauren said she might end it at lunch, my wife has stopped telling me about the specifics like she used to. And while I understand that she never had to include me in the complicated details between her and her friend, it started to affect her at work consistently, to the point where she's left work early to check on her over concerning messages that she no longer wants to show me. And I only found out about it because she was fired. She had a full-time job, but after she was fired after several warnings and nights where she'd come home and be distressed while not telling me why when I asked, she finally told me that she's been leaving early to visit Lauren, and finally showed me a bunch of similar messages to end it from the other day, and she's really been affected by Lauren's condition a lot. However, I told her that's not an excuse for the lack of communication, and I told her that over the past few weeks too, ever since she started to somewhat ghost me at home for apparently what I said after the lunch. She showed me messages that pretty much proved she was going over there, as well as many calls that happened in her car during work hours too. However, we have bills to pay, and while I figured that maybe she was just down and stressed from work when she went quiet, she began blaming me for Lauren's condition of late and saying that I encouraged her to neglect Lauren when that's not the case. I told her I don't think Lauren is a healthy friend because she's always affecting her mood even when they're not together. Not to mention how she refused to seek therapy or better herself over a year since the miscarriage. However, she now sees me as the enemy because of those comments, and I don't know how to make her stop ignoring me of late again. I felt scared to tell her not to see Lauren anymore after we left the luncheon, because of the possibility of cutting off Lauren's only support, and having her maybe do something like she said and having that on my conscience. But I'm starting to second guess myself after everything that's happened, and I just want to ask what I should do from here since she's not talking to me, and thinks I'm not supportive of Lauren's condition, and I really feel like I'm losing her. From not eating dinner with me to not talking to me for long stretches, she sees me as the enemy and I don't know what to do. Top advice before reading the update. You need to be brutally honest with your wife. She is not helping Lauren. She is enabling her. And the way she is going about enabling her is wrecking her own mental health. Has wrecked her job and is on its way to wrecking your marriage. That what Lauren is going through sucks hardcore, but your wife is not helping by allowing this to continue. Tell her that if she doesn't believe you, then she should speak to a therapist herself to find out what is an acceptable level of help versus what is enabling someone to not deal with her own problems. Tell her that the next time Lauren sends a text threatening self-harm, she should immediately call emergency services in Lauren's area. Tell them she's made a threat to hurt herself, and that she'd like them to do a welfare check on her. Then she needs to tell Lauren that she will help emotionally support her while she starts therapy, but that therapy is a must for your wife to continue supporting her. If your wife won't draw a line, you may need to draw the line yourself, before your wife lets Lauren drown all of you. I completely agree with you. And when I told her that she can't let Lauren's text suck the life out of her when she's enjoying something like the luncheon, and quickly ruin her mood by demanding to leave, I was afraid to be more adamant about staying in case something did happen with Lauren, which would make my wife resent me for a long time. I regret that now. And while I did kinda say what I meant the same day, I should have been more adamant about it, and I was wrong to say it lightly. I recently told her that Lauren was also wrong in some of the ways that she began to neglect her husband, who was trying to comfort her too, along with how Liz isn't a replacement for Lauren's husband. I didn't want to come off as controlling, and I was afraid of something happening after putting my foot down too lightly after the luncheon. But I agree with setting the boundaries for going forward starting from now that you mentioned if she'll be open to hearing them. And if not and she continues to make me the enemy, then I'll take it from there. I've been in your wife's position before where I somehow became the only support for a friend who was very mentally unwell. It was making me miserable, but I was too focused on keeping her safe to see it. My partner kept telling me it wasn't healthy and I kept ignoring him because she needed me. For me, the realization came when I was very ill and couldn't get out of bed, and somehow still ended up on the phone with her social worker trying to assess whether she needed an ambulance/mental health crisis team while she was nonverbal and communicating with me solely in cat emojis. I realized that I was putting myself at risk for a relationship I got nothing out of, because she never supported me when I was also struggling. She sent me a message the next day apologizing, and I responded saying that I was unwell and had too much on my own plate to be the person she turned to for support right now. She immediately blocked me on everything, and we haven't spoken since. The point I'm trying to make is that in my experience, you telling your wife that this relationship is unhealthy and damaging her life is not going to get through to her, because it is so hard to get over the idea that you are the only thing standing between this person and death. It is so hard to let go of the belief, which is not true by the way, that if you set boundaries and they actually do it, even if you know the chances of that are tiny, you'll be responsible. Essentially, she's now putting you in the same position for her, as she is in with Lauren. She is going to drag you down with her unless you set your own boundaries for how much of this you will tolerate. Maybe therapy or divorce will be the thing that snaps her out of it. Maybe it won't. But you can't spend the rest of your life catering to Lauren when she refuses to help herself. I'll ask her about therapy again despite already trying once, only to be ignored. I offered going together or even alone for her, including encouraging her to suggest it to Lauren too. But after I said what I said about how Lauren has become too demanding, she's seen me as the enemy since, and has been unwilling to talk to me in my own home. Not to mention showing no plan to look for new jobs, or file for unemployment and expecting me to pay the bills after saying that I can't afford it while she recovers, which is just another bag of worms. I'll ask her again to see if she'll be willing to talk about therapy and where we go from here. But given her silent treatment, I'm not confident that she'll want to talk at all. And if she doesn't, I'm thinking that that might be her answer in being done with our relationship. And now for the update. A lot of people said that the proper word that describes her relation to Lauren is codependent, and I honestly agree. Some suggested that I leave for a few days to take a break and think about what I'm getting out of the relationship post Lauren's miscarriage that sparked the dramatic behavior change in my wife. However, the suggestion that I decided to follow was talking to her once more and telling her where I stand and seeing where we both stand on the matter. So that conversation is why I'm updating. I echoed what someone said about how Liz could be enabling Lauren from wanting to seek therapy when she knows that she can call her at any time. And I also told her that lying by leaving early was wrong too. I also told her that we needed to discuss her next job, but she said that she'll get it when she wants to because it's my fault that she had to sneak around in the first place. And she also disclosed something new. She said that she's an empath and that she and Lauren are pretty much the same person. So when I criticized Lauren, I was criticizing her. She also said that I am someone who doesn't prioritize mental health because I criticized Lauren, and that if she hadn't lied and sacrificed her job to be with her, Lauren might not be here, and it would be my fault. So she said that paying for the bills was the least I can do because I don't care about Lauren at all, completely forgetting how I cooked for them numerous times and bought them movie tickets among other things, and sometimes with my own money too. Before I could even say more once she got started, she said that she's been talking about me to Lauren a lot and that I'm no better than her ex-husband and that she wants out and there's no changing her mind. Honestly, when we were going to talk, I wasn't expecting her to lay into me like that. I didn't expect it to be roses, but I really didn't expect her to get at me like that. I've been depressed myself lately and trying to push through, but we are in the process of getting a divorce because that's what she wanted, and I've also taken some time off for myself too. I've just started therapy, but the divorce process hurts and still hurts honestly. But that's pretty much it. I'm back working, but it still hurts. I'm playing a lot more games than I usually do at home, and a few of my friends have been really comforting. But it hurts. I don't want to ask for any advice on moving on from such an ugly end to everything if anyone has any suggestions. But that's pretty much it. She was done before I could even get that far. I'd even pushed for counseling together like someone else suggested too. Hey, I remember your first post. I'm really sorry that things ended up going down this way. I was afraid this is where this was headed. She was in deep into the codependency and enabling, and they were clearly co-poisoning each other's heads about marriage and husbands. Know that there is nothing you could have done differently to prevent this outcome. Your wife has mental health issue. Codependency is a mental health issue, and it parallels addiction in many ways. Your wife's mental health issues led her to choose an emotionally unhealthy relationship where she felt needed, over a healthy one where she didn't. You cannot blame yourself for being healthy. That was not a fault. You are young and you will bounce back from this. Let yourself feel your grief and anger. Those are normal things to feel right now. Invest your friendships and hobbies. Do what you can to make time pass, even if that's video games. But try to make sure you're socializing and exercising too, so you don't fall into a trap where you neglect yourself or your life. I'm so sorry you went through this. Trying to push through it while also working on some other aspects right now too. Would love to find some new hobbies as well. She also began telling some of our mutual friends about me being against mental health as well, so it's been weird with some friends, and some who wanted less to do with me since. So I'm trying to start over and maybe find some new ones eventually, which seems easier said than done at the moment, but hopefully soon as I have few good ones right now. Obviously you aren't against mental health. You're against enabling behavior, being codependent to the point where you lose your job, and untrained people pretending they are therapists. You know there's always some bleeding of the friendships when a divorce happens, and people make unexpected choices. But make sure you get your story out there and counter the false narrative. Like make sure people know your wife was literally fired because she wouldn't stop enabling this friend, and wasn't capable of drawing healthy boundaries. Well, your ex-wife and her best friend are made for each other. If it's any comfort, those two are not going to lead happy lives. They were friends long before we started dating going back to high school, so perhaps there was no coming between them at all. She knew Lauren before she met me too. I've told a few friends my side, and some have stayed with me. It's just insane how fast everything changed. Your marriage was lost when she uttered, before it was us, it was them. I'm so sorry for you, man, but I strongly recommend therapy for yourself to help deal with all this. Also stand your ground on the house and everything. She threw away the marriage, not you. Recently started, like very recently. What hurts more now is just the loss of friends who she was able to convince to her side, or maybe told them a different version. I don't know. I lost one good friend or someone I thought to be a good friend, and maybe they'll come back. But it would have been cool to help me find stuff to do, although I have family and a few others who can help with that. But it hurts for now the friends part. I'm so sorry, but this may be the best outcome for you. Your wife was lost to you long before this. Now you can work on your own mental health. You can move forward without the stress and worry of an absent/toxic partner. It's just crazy how fast everything happened over the course of a little over a year. Update. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to do Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' without my wife? Original post. I, 30 male, feel stupid for even asking. My sister, 29, and my wife, 34 female, did not have the best history. Before we met, my wife was my sister's landlady, and she was renting the room at the back of my wife's house 6 years ago. She got evicted less than 4 months after moving in because my sister did not pay her rent at all. Then she was taken to court for damages that costed way more than she put down on a security deposit. My sister did end up having to pay, but basically hated my wife for this. We met after this all went down, and I went to go pick up my sister's stuff she left behind that my wife was decent enough to not have thrown out yet. We started chatting and really hit it off. Started dating. A year and a half later, she got pregnant with our son. Now we are happily married, but my sister never took it well. We weren't as close before all this, but after becoming a traitor in her eyes, we didn't talk much. She hasn't even met my son, who's 3. My parents are really trying to push for us all to have a family Thanksgiving at their place. My sister never wanted to go because I'd be there with my wife, and she didn't want to see me. My parents never pushed it before because they didn't think my sister was being fair, considering the issues she has with my wife for all things she did herself. This year, they feel different though, since my sister broke up with her boyfriend of 6 years, and it's her first holiday without him. She, however, doesn't want to see my son or wife, so that's why they're asking if they'd be left at home. My wife doesn't have any other family, and I don't want her and my son missing out because my sister doesn't want them there. It's not a problem for me to miss out on dinner with my wife so my sister could have the company, so I'm just staying home with my own family. My sister is blowing it out of proportion because she wants me there. But I'm being an a-hole because she wants the whole family there. Parents are taking her side here because it's been a difficult year losing her boyfriend and job. So she just wants one family dinner for Thanksgiving. I get it, it's been tough for her. But I'm just having a hard time seeing how it's selfish or being inconsiderate to not want to exclude my family. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not a hole. It's been 6 years and your sister was at fault. Time to grow up and drop the grudge. And the fact that she would hold it against your toddler is ridiculous. If she wants her whole family there, she needs to accept that your wife and child are family, whether she likes it or not. Family doesn't always get along. She needs to deal with that or not expect you there. It's how I feel too. My wife was the wronged party and she's over it now. I'm sure because my sister was the one who had to pay out of pocket, she feels differently about it. But still, like you said, it's been 6 years. Your parents have clearly babied your sister her whole life if they've allowed this to go on this long. This should have been nipped in the bud years ago. But for some reason, none of you put your foot down with her tantrums. Your responsibility is to your wife and child. End of story. If your parents are going to act this irrationally and bend to your sister's hysterics, it may be time to draw a line in the sand. This is one of those times when taking no side is actually taking a side when one party's so clearly in the wrong. For the past few years, they have told her that if she doesn't want to be around my family, then she can be excluded from family events. This is the only time they want to do whatever to make her happy because of what's been going on. Your sister and parents can't have it both ways. If parents are wanting to prioritize sister this year, then they need to commit to that. That means accepting Thanksgiving for them this year is just parents and sister. But they cannot demand you pretend you don't have your own immediate family now, your wife and son. They're literally demanding you disrespect your wife and child by pretending they don't exist, and that your parents and sister are still your only immediate family. That's unfair and unhealthy, and hardly going to help your sister get over her breakup. Call your parents on speaker. Ask your mom how she would feel if a couple years into her marriage, your dad had left her to celebrate Thanksgiving with a 3-year-old toddler alone, while he celebrated with his real family. Ask your dad if he would treat his wife like that. If this is the kind of husband he was raising you to be. And then hang up so they can think about it. Not today, Hall, although your sister is. She's mad at your wife because she didn't pay her rent and got evicted 6 years ago. I guess she's had a rough year, but let it go already. If the whole family isn't there, it's your sister, not you. Good luck. Not only didn't she pay rent for 4 months, she also apparently managed to damage the property so much the security deposit didn't cover it. That means that it wasn't a few smaller things, but some mid-sized to major damage. Within 4 months. Not today, Hall, and sister should get over herself. She was in the wrong 100% back then. And now for the update. Well, of course I didn't follow along with her ridiculous request. I wasn't about to leave my wife and child at home to have dinner with people who didn't want my family there. It pissed me off like you can't imagine. We had fights prior to the dinner because I couldn't believe my parents were fine with excluding my son from time to spend with them. It bothered me the more I thought about it. Then there went my sister calling, crying that I'm a piece of trash for not being there for her. Honestly, it was so irritating. We went back and forth. I just remember telling her to grow up and stop being a spoiled you-know-what. And, well, she didn't call after that one. We stayed home to have our own Thanksgiving. My son kept asking where Grandma and Grandpa are. I wasn't about to tell him the real reason that we weren't going with them, so we only told him they're a little sick so we can't go. He still wanted to talk to them. The video chatted for a while. Then you could hear my sister in the background. Then they were suddenly in a hurry to end a call. I'm sure she didn't know they were talking to us. I tried not to let that anger me too much so we could all be in a good mood. To the person who suggested a nice pajama Thanksgiving dinner, well, we followed through on that and it was pretty relaxing. My son decided he wanted to go all out with his dinosaur PJs. It was a lovely time. We made a pillow fort after dinner, then my son fell into a food coma. So me and my wife had some alone time too. This was so much better than any dinner with my parents and someone who has no respect for my family. It really left me with a completely different view of them. I know she really is going through something difficult, and my parents are trying to help, but it hurts knowing that I wanted to toss my family to decide to make her happy. For that reason, we won't be spending Christmas with them either. Which has been a whole thing too, but oh well, they did this to themselves. We're taking a little family vacation up to the mountains, so my son can enjoy the snow. Just to do something fun on Christmas so he doesn't focus on the fact that we're not spending it with his grandparents either. I'm from someone who has no contact with my mother. I tell my kids a kids-friendly version of the truth. That way no one else can come along and spin lies and turn them against me. For me, it's been my mom has problems and it makes her mean, and I don't want you guys, my kids, have her to be mean to you. You could explain for Christmas simply that Granny and Pa need to support Auntie right now because she is sad, and Auntie asked to not do celebrations with us this year while she gets better. So we are going to do our own fun things. Sure, it's nicer than what is happening, but at least kids knows. This is a really good explanation. Thank you. It's hard to explain these adult situations to a little kid, and we don't want to necessarily lie to him, but also he obviously can't know what the real reason is. My mom was estranged from her family. Before I was old enough to understand the details, it was always, Mama's family are mean to people, and we are worried they will be mean to you. We promise to tell you when you're older more. And then when I was older, she told me the real reason. Just like your son will one day need to know the real reason if this spoiling of your sister continues. Even if it's watered down to, my sister is not nice to your mom or you, and my parents supported it. Good for you. I don't understand how in the world your sister expected you to dump your family for her. That is totally ridiculous. It really is, honestly. After all these years to still have that grudge over a situation that was no one's fault but hers. Great post. Sounds like you have a healthy marriage and know where your priorities are. Congrats on your traditions. Do they make dino PJs in adult sizes? Preferable Christmas themed. I may have to try that. Now for the last story. Update. Am I the a-hole for calling out my mother-in-law at her daughter's memorial service for implying her daughter's death was sadder because she wanted children? Original post. My 26 male wife's 26 female younger sister 23 female passed away unexpectedly. It was shocking for all of us, and I've just been trying to be supportive while processing my own grief. At her memorial service, I overheard a relative who had lost her only child tell my mother-in-law that while my sister-in-law's death was tragic, at least she had another child. My mother-in-law tried to explain that it wasn't any consolation since her daughters were both unique individuals, but then they got into a borderline argument about it. My mother-in-law then tried to put it to rest by saying, in any case, even if I still have my wife, sister-in-law was my only hope for having grandchildren. Since my wife doesn't want any, so I'll always be mourning that missed possibility. For context, my wife and I aren't even child-free. We just don't want to have children until at least our late 30s. It has been a very sore point for her mother, who has made it clear to everyone that she believes we are lying about delaying it, just to avoid discussing it with her. At that point, I interrupted and said it's a very insensitive thing to say about both her daughters, to reduce one's entire value to her openness towards having children, and dismiss another's value for not having children in the near future. My mother-in-law seemed to not even consider my point and was mostly just incensed about how we could even confront her at a time like this. She finally told me she's not in any state to deal with us and left. I later told my wife about it, and she said that even if I was right, that wasn't the time to bring it up, and that she doesn't have any emotional capacity to even care about it at the moment. I feel really guilty for being responsible for creating some new drama right now, but I also think what my mother-in-law said was highly dismissive and that I had to defend my wife right there. Now for the top comments before reading the update. You're the a-hole. Your wife is right. This wasn't the time or place to have this conversation. Your mother-in-law is dealing with incomprehensible grief and isn't in a position to have perfect feelings about things. And while her comments were ugly and mean-spirited, confronting her at her dad-daughter's memorial service was comically inappropriate. You should apologize. And mother-in-law was poked first by the dumb, well, at least you have another living child, comment. That was stupid and cruel thing to say at someone's child's funeral. So mother-in-law has the additional mitigation of trying to defend herself against that hurtful comment. Exactly. This conversation never should have happened in the first place. Grief is not a competition, and the person who said that is just as big of an a-hole as Opie. You're the a-hole, and the relative who started the conversation is a massive a-hole. Who the hell says, well, you lost one, but hey, at least you've got another. What? That's so insane. And then for you to be rude to her about your opinions and having children while she's mourning the death of her child? She is absolutely allowed to mourn the fact that she will never get grandchildren from her younger daughter. Who cares if she made some passing comment about not having grandkids? She's allowed to mourn not getting grandkids just as much as you're allowed to not have children. You should have bit your tongue. You were way out of line and so was the relative. She is absolutely allowed to mourn the fact that she will never get grandchildren from her younger daughter. Exactly. She is allowed to want grandchildren and experience grief over the very real chance she may not get to have them. That is absolutely okay. You're the a-hole. The woman had just lost a daughter, and some dumbass was arguing with her about how it shouldn't hurt. In the context of that argument, your mother-in-law was put into a position to say something in the moment she didn't mean. Then you decided to butt in, gang up on her, and call her out at her daughter's funeral? A-hole move. Incidentally, since you were eavesdropping long enough to relay the rest of the conversation, you could have intervened earlier, like when some a-hole was telling your mother-in-law she shouldn't be sad about her daughter's death. It seems pretty callous towards your mother to only get worked up when you did. And now for the update. I should probably explain why I didn't respond to any of the comments. It dawned on me immediately just how awful it was to say what I did, and that I continued thinking I could be right in some twisted way till I saw the answers here. I told my wife straight away how sorry I was for adding to her grief when it should be my duty to be by her side through it. I waited till now to apologize to mother-in-law. I told her I failed her in every way, by not standing up for her when she was told a massively insensitive thing, by misunderstanding what she actually meant, and by causing her that kind of hurt when she hadn't even began to process her mourning, and affirmed that she's the best mother both her daughters could have asked for. We cried together for some time. We talked a lot about my sister-in-law, her life, how difficult and different it's going to be. We had a frank conversation about the future. She said she was sorry how her comment might have come off as, but she really felt upset deep down because she might not get to experience being a grandmother. I didn't really know if it was the right thing to say at the time, but I told her that we both really do want kids, but we want to be richer and in better places in our careers, so we won't have to struggle with balancing parenthood with work and can spend time with them. I even told her we just started saving up for freezing embryos and are hoping to get it done next year. She seemed to be genuinely convinced and comforted and said she's happy we had that talk. I'm really grateful for the sub. Without it, I would have probably just sat on my crappy opinions indefinitely until people forgot about it. I wish I didn't need to be told what a nahal I was. It takes a massive amount of self-awareness to not only realize you were wrong, but also to own up to it with no excuses to the people that you hurt. It sounds like your mother-in-law was comforted by hearing that you and your wife had plans in the future for having kids. I know we are strangers, but damn, I'm proud of you, OP. I agree. It sounds like the whole ordeal may actually end up strengthening OP's relationship with mother-in-law, which is probably good for both of them given the circumstances. Also, it sounds like mother-in-law having hope for grandkids again might help at least relieve a small amount of the massive grief she is facing. So happy you recognized and apologized for your poor behavior. Fingers crossed that all goes well for you and your wife on your future fertility journey. Also, very sorry for the loss of your sister-in-law, but thankful that your family's coming together to support one another. OP, this is just really impressive. Thank you for being honest and present for your mother-in-law and your family, and coming back and updating the sub. I am sorry for your family's loss and hope you can all continue to heal and grow together. I'm female 34, losing my family because they think that I hid a fact from them that my ex, now sisters, female 28, husband male 35, is abusive. I don't want to go into all the details because it is long, boring, and still painful. Some bits at least. But I met my ex 4 years ago and I at least was madly in love with him. For about 2 years, I was blissfully happy until I took him home for Christmas and I caught him making out with my sister. It devastated me. My ex tried to apologize, kept trying to get me back, but I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. And 3 months later, my sister and him were expecting their first. Now they're married with 2 children. My family forgave them eventually when children were in the picture. I kept my distance, but I have met them on the occasional family gathering. I still feel hurt by my sister, but other than that, I'm good. Then last weekend, my mom asked me to come home for something urgent, and there was my dad too. They told me that they were disappointed in me for not being honest about my ex being violent. I was shocked, but my mom told me that he is physically harming my sister. That's when my sister came to my parents, and I saw her face and cut lip. I was shocked, and I really couldn't say anything other than I never knew. My sister became very upset and started yelling at me, asking what the heck I meant by that. That I was so much better than her that he didn't hurt me? I said no, but no amount of swearing that I didn't know and that he must have hidden his true nature would convince them. My mom just told me to leave and said she was very disappointed. I have cried every day now, remembering my sister's face, but I just don't know why this happened to her. He was so very kind and gentle with me, but I can't explain why he was that way. I don't know how people like him work, but according to my sister, if he is abusive once, then he must be like this all the time. I have no experience with people like this, so I couldn't answer her. But he has been harming her since the beginning of their relationship. When I calmed down, I texted my mother because she wasn't answering my calls. That my sister is right, and that people like my ex are just so. But that maybe the circumstances is different. My sister is younger. I knew that some men show their true colors after marriage, or after children, etc. My relationship with him wasn't of the same nature. I tried every explanation. But this just seemed to trigger her further because she texted me back that I'm a liar, that hid the truth from them, instead of warning my sister. She asked if I thought I was better than my sister not to have been harmed by the same man. I was shocked. Like, is it about the woman? Better women get mistreated less? I couldn't believe what I was reading. I texted her that she was disgusting to say something like this, but I regretted it so much. Now, nobody from my family is talking to me. Not even my father who I talk to on a daily basis. I don't know what to do or how to help. I really need help explaining why my sister's husband is what he is. I feel so guilty. Now for the top advice. So your family, who have excused your sister's awful betrayal, are mad at you because you could have magically foreseen your ex's true nature? Someone who's so messed up in the head that fooled around with your sister right under your nose at a family event? I don't know where to start. Cut all of them off. And get therapy to figure out why you'd be able to twist all this up in your own head so that you're the bad guy. Yeah, this family's literal garbage. Better off without them by a million miles. Viking funeral for the family. Let them all burn and pile. They are jumping to some pretty massive logic gaps to justify this. Harm a bit. And it is Opie's fault and not Sister and more husband's actions? I mean, it is not like Sister tested the waters and looked for red flags before humping her now awful husband. A million miles may not be enough. All of this, like the fact that he was a cheater, didn't clue them in that he is not great news? If anything, Sister thought she was special and had never mistreat her. He's just had more time to escalate during his marriage. She got pregnant, then they got married, and the real him came out. If you had married him and had a baby with him, he probably would have mistreated you too. There are people that once they lock down their significant other, the real them comes out. This isn't your fault. Instead of blaming him, they are blaming you. He is the POS. I wonder what Sister wants out of this. Blame Opie because she brought home a man that little sister could steal? Sister believes it must have happened to Opie, and she should have been fairly warned. Even if she was an a-hole to her sister, she didn't deserve that kind of treatment. I can understand being really upset knowing the same man hit her but not you, but the family's backwards. They should be ostracizing him instead of Opie. No offense, but why do you want this family? Your sister betrayed you. They took her side. You left and did not want anything to do with your sister. People like your ex have a good way of hiding it. This isn't your fault. He is a trashy person. But I will say, find a family that will treat you better, not one that will always make you the one at fault for things that aren't. And like another poster pointed out, what did they expect from a cheater? Didn't she get all the signs she needed then that he wasn't a good person? Next story. My parents disowned me for ruining my sister's relationship, but I'm happier and healthier than ever. My older sister was going out with a guy who worked as a psychologist. She used to pressure me into booking an appointment with him for the longest time, until I informed him about her antics, which put a strain on their relationship, as accepting me as a patient would be an ethical violation and he could easily lose his license over this. My parents were mad at me for not going along with my sister's demands, but things calmed down once she made up with her boyfriend. It didn't last long though. After some time, my sister started bragging about knowing some spicy details from her boyfriend's therapy sessions. I thought she was bluffing at first, since she has a tendency to just say whatever to make herself look more important, but I was apparently wrong. During one of the family dinners, in the presence of all the aunts and uncles, my sister started to talk about her boyfriend's patients with a lot of details. As someone who is currently attending therapy for over a year, I was appalled. I didn't know what to do with this for the longest time. I even thought about reporting her boyfriend, but I didn't. I couldn't do it, since there was no physical proof of what my sister said, and I'm pretty sure no one would attest to what happened at the dinner for the sake of keeping the peace, as always. But oh god, I'm glad I haven't reported this poor man, since he himself was pretty much unaware of everything. Since this post is already long enough, I would try to keep it as short as possible. I contacted my sister's boyfriend and told him about her gossiping about his patients. I have no proof, but I told him the information and managed to remember. He didn't confirm or deny that those details are true, but I guess they were, as hearing about it was enough for him to break up with my sister. All hell broke loose. She had to move out from his house back to our parents' place, which made my parents really unhappy. From what I learned before my parents decided they hate me for what I did, my sister somehow got an access to her now ex-boyfriend's work laptop, which is a crime, by the way. She almost jeopardized his career, and I know he tried to sue her. I don't know the details because by then I was already officially disowned and blocked by my parents. The rest of my family also isn't too thrilled with me because everyone was wishing for a doctor, lawyer, or psychologist to join the family. Honestly, at first I was grieving the loss of my parents and even sister, but as months go by, I feel better and better. I'm currently attending the university almost 4 hours away and living in a dormitory. And while I do miss coming home to my parents, I've realized they had a lot to do with my mental health deteriorating due to their obvious favoritism. I'm happy to get out of my system. OMG, she did what? Oh man, Opie, you 100% did the right thing. Like, the hair on the back of my neck is standing up right now, thinking about what she would have read in the file if that were my psychologist. That's such an awful thing for her to do. On behalf of all her ex-boyfriend's patients, thank you. You protected them from something they hopefully never need to find out they needed protecting from. I was just as terrified as you are. The things she said during that dinner was really detailed. Not some vague, there is this patient that has this problem, but more like, there is a woman named XYZ who works at the school and has this problem. Not one person at a table, aside from me, saw a problem with that. So thank you for this comment. It actually means a lot to me, even if I know deep down that I did the right thing. Damn, that's wild. She may have already ruined his career. By law, he has to inform the patients of the breach, which could lead them to firing him and spreading the news. He could be fired if he's with a company/group, and they're extra risk averse. If he hadn't sued her, he'd be risking his license. This is all just gross. Your sister needs a new therapist, and not to date. Wow. Sister should have had charges brought against her. She violated confidential files. Your sister is a POS, and any family member taking her side is also. I'm pretty sure her ex was trying to sue her, but I don't know what came out of it. At this point, I'm afraid that reaching out to any member of my family would be like sticking a hand into a beehive. As an aside, I'm sure you realize she wanted you to have a session with him so she could read his session notes. Stay away from her, literally forever. Oh yeah, I'm aware of this. She wasn't even trying to hide it, to be honest. She accused me of going behind her back to contact her ex-boyfriend because he was very professional after learning about everything, told me he can't have me as a client for ethical reasons, and gave me a few recommendations, which she saw as some gotcha moment, saying I must be faking not feeling well, and I'm afraid she will learn about it. Wow, your sister seems like a nightmare, and one that completely lacks critical thinking skills. I can't even understand the mental gymnastics she had to go through to think that the result of her boyfriend saying no to the session for ethical reasons is you must be faking not feeling well. That's just so dumb. I almost feel bad for her. Her IQ must be depressingly low. Last story. I lost my best friend because I reported her child predator stepson. This happened in 2019. My friend of 10 years told me her stepson, about 20 or 21, was being investigated for exposing himself to school kids near their school. Like he was literally waiting for kids to get out of school and had his junk in his hand in his car so they could see him. He was waiting for a court date when she called me freaking out because he was on the news as wanted because he had touched a 10 to 11-year-old girl in a store. I immediately Googled the incident and saw his mugshot as a person of interest for touching a little girl in the toy section of a Target store. I immediately called a detective. The news gave a number that if anyone knew this person who fit this description, they should call it. I told the detective I knew who this person was, and that he was waiting a trial for exposing himself to school children. I told the detective his name, and gave him the number of my friend and said that was his stepmom. My friend called me perplexed that a detective called her, and she didn't know how he got her number. I played dumb for about a month, then I couldn't hold it in any longer. When she asked me how he knew her number, I told her I called him, that I was accountable to the community and to that little girl who he tried to grab. I told her that if her stepson had a personal computer at her house, she should turn it over because it probably had materials on it involving children. That he was sick and deserved to go to jail. Things were never the same between us after that. She disowned me as a friend, told me she couldn't trust me anymore. She said she was trying to help him and that he could recover from his impulsive behavior. That a therapist said there was hope in the future for him. I have a hard time believing that someone who is attracted to kids can recover from that and live a normal life. I don't know, maybe they can, but I don't think they're safe in the community around kids. I don't hide my identity here. I don't care honestly. I believe what I did was the right thing to do. If I never talk to her again, I will still feel like I did the right thing. We must protect our kids. Now for the comments. I agree that you absolutely 100% did the right thing. It sucks that you lost a friend, but you are truly better off without her in your life if she is the type of person willing to hide/cover for a child predator. I know people are willing to go to great lengths sometimes to protect their kids/stepkids, but Jesus, there is a line, and pedos are way over it. Anyone willing to knowingly put every other person's children at risk just to save their own is not worthy having you as their friend. I'd wager she was never truly Opie's friend if she bailed on them after that. Friend was 100% an enabler and probably a sociopath. She should have helped him before he went to touch a minor. I hate people like your friend who blame everyone but the person who was in the wrong. Exactly. I know that in Europe, there are programs for people who feel attracted to minors, where they can get free therapy to help them to never act on it. That's the keyword here. The stepson already acted on his impulses more than once and traumatized little kids. He has to answer for that. Exactly. Many people feel that kind of attraction were themselves assaulted as kids. Many mental health professionals consider this kind of attraction as a mental health disorder, which it is. Healthy, normal adult brains are not interested in kids. Having the thoughts and seeking help so they don't act on them is brave. The key though is that they do not act on them. Stepson might have had something awful happen to him as a kid. He might be mentally unwell. But in the end, he did act on these thoughts. And multiple minors were traumatized because of it. He has to live with the consequences of that. If stepmom wants to help him, she can fight for him to be institutionalized instead of imprisoned. But at the end of the day, he harmed multiple children. If he goes to prison, that's on him, not Opie. Hugh did the right thing. While the police were looking for an unidentified perp, he was free to attack other defenseless children. He was looking for his third victim until he was caught. Again. Hugh did the right thing. Maybe even saved his life from an irate family member. The therapist said that he might be okay in the future. That's after sentencing, jail time, and lots of therapy. 20 years in the future with a lot of hard work on his part and oversight by doctors, therapists, and probation officers, he might get better. I doubt he will ever be given a clean bill of health and permission to oversee little children, but he might get better. You are better off without that friend who will hide a pedo stepson who's attacked a child and being actively sought for violating another. She's the relative who will encourage a victim not to tell because their molester was family and let the crime continue. The perp isn't the only sick one in that family. Thank you. Update: thank you everyone for your comments and sharing your experiences and for your willingness to do the same thing. More people like this, please. None of that matters, and I feel great about this after hearing from all of you. Thank you for listening and lending support and friendship. Am I the a-hole for refusing to take my ex-wife as +1 to my son's wedding? My son is 22, my daughter is 18. 6 years ago, my daughter caught my wife with another man. She told her brother who understood what she had witnessed. Then they both came and told me. I verified that it was true, then I divorced my wife. During the divorce hearing, both of them expressed a desire to stay with me, so I was given primary custody, with my ex getting 1 week a month, and she moved in with the other guy. I have done my best to cut my ex out of my life. Our communication is limited to the bare minimum needed to coordinate custody and shared expenses, and I have never talked about our relationship to my kids. Initially, after the divorce, she told me that our kids were giving her hell when it was her custody, and that I needed to talk to them. I sat them down and asked if it was true, and they said they didn't want to stay there. But I explained that it would be best for everyone if they remained civil until they turned 18, so we wouldn't have to go back to court. I didn't get complaints after that, so it seemed to be working. When my son turned 18, he moved back in with me full-time and started college. He graduated now and is getting married in a few months. My daughter turned 18 last summer and moved back in with me full-time too. My ex-wife called me today, and she started crying saying that she was not invited to my son's wedding. Then she told me that my son hasn't talked to her in over a year. He had still been dropping in after turning 18 to visit his sisters sometimes, but eventually stopped doing that too. Likewise, apparently my daughter stopped talking to her after turning 18 too. My ex-wife asked if I would bring her as my +1 so she could see her son getting married. But I told her that if my son didn't invite her, it wasn't my place to bring her. Then she started accusing me of turning them against her and threatening to take me to court. I just told her that there was no more custody agreement to take to court since both of them are above 18, and hung up. I sat down with both of them later and asked them if they had cut contact with their mother, and they both admitted it. I explained to them that they did not need to do that for my sake, and I still recognize she's their mother. But they both said they had talked about it a lot and their plan was always to hold out until they were 18. But they had no desire to be around her or the other guy because she had destroyed our family. I told them that they're adults, and if that's their decision, I won't pressure them to change it. I was telling my sister what happened, and to my surprise, she said my son wasn't being fair, that I should make him invite his mother to the wedding. Am I the a-hole for refusing the attempt? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She had 6 years to figure out how to at least repair enough damage that her kids wouldn't go no contact the moment they were able. Sounds like the opposite happened. Not the a-hole. Your son should consider hiring security to ensure she doesn't crash the wedding or even come as your sister's +1. Not the a-hole, but your sister is. I don't know what is with people pushing family members to reconcile simply because they are blood related, but it's something that needs to stop. People are allowed to choose who they want in their lives, and just because someone helped create you doesn't mean you have to choose them. You should forgive family when they do something inconvenient or annoying. You can forgive family for doing something mildly stupid or embarrassing and they're sorry. But a-holes, especially unrepentant ones, do not get a free pass just because you're related. Not the a-hole. It seemed like you did your best to encourage them to have some contact with their mother. But they are adults now and can decide whether they want to or not, and they clearly decided. Next story. Am I the a-hole for insisting on meeting in public for custody exchanges? I, 31 male, am divorced from my ex, 33 female, for several years now. 50-50 custody of my 2 children, 13 male and 9 female, though it's defaulted to me having them 80% of the time since the divorce. The past few years have been littered with false CPS reports and them coming to my house talking to my children, just for a few weeks to go by and everything is closed and we move on, just for it to happen again. Then, we moved a few months ago. I disclosed my address to the court, and all parties involved except my ex. Since we moved, the CPS visits have stopped completely, but I keep in touch with a caseworker who's helped me with finding my son help with his mental health. Everything has been kosher for months. We've been using the school schedule for custody exchanges as it makes things easier. Then, I recently found out from my niece, ex's bio family, that my ex weaponized CPS to make my life hell. So now with the holiday, MLK landing on an exchange day, my ex is demanding to drop them off at my house. I've told her we can meet at a police department and do a secure exchange. There's marked parking spots with surveillance cameras and everything, and she's refusing, saying that I'm hiding things and she just needs to know. Am I the a-hole for insisting on all meetings and interaction be through monitored channels? Not the a-hole, and that is a very smart thing to do. Make sure you let the caseworker know that CPS calls coincidentally ended when the ex didn't know where you were. When you meet at a police department, make sure you don't go straight home. She or one of her friends may be following you to see where you live. I wish you the best. We're going grocery shopping first and maybe a pack of magic cards for my son. I considered I may be followed already, but I really do appreciate the forethought. If the kids have cell phones, check the location permissions in apps like Find My iPhone or any social media with location sharing. Location services are only on for Google services, which is connected to my account so I can find their devices. Had an incident where we had to find his phone by a friend's house last year, and since then I've been meticulous. Not the a-hole. Your ex has proven her egregious use of CPS, that she cannot be trusted. She's not looking out for your children. She's looking for ways to hurt you. Since this in turn hurts your children, continue to protect both of them and yourself. Keep meeting in public and keep your address private as long as possible. If there's any way to file charges against her or to get her to face consequences for her actions, please do so. Your ex is not only hurting you, but also children who genuinely need the intervention of CPS whose time and resources your ex continues to misuse. Unfortunately, misusing resources with CPS isn't chargeable because it's not emergency services. This is pretty much verbatim what the police department told me, but I'm pretty sure the officer just didn't want to get involved. Not the a-hole. I would normally say exes should know where one another lives, but this is no ordinary case. Keep meeting in public. When she complains, ask her what she is hiding. I actually just texted her this, and she responded with whatever. So I'm 99% sure this is a game to her. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my brother be part of the family business? First, some important info. I, 44 male, have a younger brother, 41 male, and we are the only children. Also, we are not from the US or any Western country. My father passed away almost 10 years ago. Since our mother was also dead, we divided his estate equally. His estate was a farm of 12 hectares, 30 acres. Back then, it had a house, a barn, a pond, wheat fields, and olive fields. We were both working office jobs in the city and did not want to be farmers. But after my dad died, my wife convinced me to quit, buy out my brother, and start a business with her, as she had degrees in business and hospitality while I was working in accounting. And that's what I did. I bought out my brother at market price. After that, my wife and I transformed the farm, got government subsidies to make our farm more sustainable, transformed the area by the pond into a garden and romantic strolling route and a fishing spot. The closest farm plots were made into a pedagogic farm, and some made available to guests to rent, built small houses, built a stable, and bought some horses. We made it into a retreat where you can either spend a day, act as a farmer and have some authentic food, or rent a cabin and try the farm life. The rest of the farm was left to farmhands. Since we are barely 2 hours outside city limits, it became a booming business. We were booked solid all year. We have schools coming for tours, activities every weekend, couples throwing their weddings here. And after the first 5 years, we were able to pay off our debt and are making great money. My brother used his money to buy a house, 2 cars, and on his children's schooling. And they are living well. I would say upper middle class by my country's standards, but nothing like me and my family. Now he says that he wants in on the business, that what he was paid was not fair. I told him no, that he got what his land was worth back then. Now he is no longer talking to me and he is the only family I have left. So am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. He got market value for his half. He used it up while you invested your time and money and now you are getting your return on investment. No need to feel guilty. Right. If it's the other way around and OP's business tanked, he would not have the right to ask his brother for money because he overpaid. Good on you, OP. His jealousy is not your responsibility, and you can focus on the family you have, and not the family who does not want to be there. Not the a-hole. The only way I could side with your brother would be if you took advantage of his grieving and bought a share. I do doubt this as a possibility, considering it must have taken some time for your wife to convince you to give up your career to suddenly become a farmer. Also, it's been 10 years, and he hasn't mentioned any regret during that time. I think it's clear your brother is having money troubles or perhaps a midlife crisis. Either way, he got a fair deal for his share. If he wants back in, he can offer to repurchase his half. OP says his brother is upper middle class, so I think it's regret for missing out on the opportunity. If OP never told him he and his wife had big plans when they bought out the brother, I can see why he feels a little resentful. That's pure speculation though. I asked about it elsewhere, so maybe OP will clarify. But brother wasn't forced to sell. I told him about our plans, but not in detail since we only had vague ideas then. Not the a-hole. If he had invested his half of the money into literally anything else, would he share the fruits of that investment with you? I don't think so. You had all the work transforming the place and you had all the risk of it not working too. Also, it definitely sounds like you invested some of your own money too to make all that possible. He wants all the fruits of the labor without doing any of the labor. I get that you don't want to lose him, so maybe there is a calm way to talk about all of this, with a mediator present or something like that. He needs to understand that you invested the money and succeeded. But I mean, you could have failed too. And if you did, would he just give you money from his half? Last story. Am I the a-hole? Active duty sister-in-law is mad her brother and I are having another baby. Background. My sister-in-law is a divorced single mother to a 2-year-old and is on active duty. She used to have friends that she would regularly leave her child with instead of us, because she also needed someone to feed and watch her 3 dogs, 4 indoor cats, and 3 to 4 outdoor cats. We watched the animals and a friend watched the kid. On multiple occasions, when this friend would fall through on childcare, she would call us the day off, and we would rearrange our lives, fight traffic, and get her kid because we wanted to help. When she has long underways, we made it clear we cannot watch her kid because my husband is also active duty and at work. I cannot drop my own kid off at school and drive 45 minutes to an hour across town to the military base and fight traffic to drop hers off and then get to work on time. Her child goes to the military base daycare facility, while my child goes to a public school 10 to 15 minutes from my house in the opposite direction of the base. His hours don't always allow him the ability to drop her kid off and pick her up. As for the current situation, my husband and I invited my sister-in-law and niece to our child's birthday party on Saturday. We also informed her we were newly pregnant again and mentioned that we had not told my in-laws yet. We assumed she would be excited to be an aunt again. She initially agreed, but my husband and I both noticed a tone change on the phone. We both assumed she had been just annoyed at her little one, since we could hear her trying to shop with her when we called. Later in the evening, she texts my husband and says she isn't coming to the party. He asks why, and she states that we had struggled to help her out with her child and having her a few times a week, but now we're having a whole baby we need to care for 24/7, and that she's hurt and needs some space and time. Of course, I personally could not leave this be, and let her know her comments were selfish and did not depict the entire picture since we have repeatedly cared for her child on numerous occasions, sometimes with no notice. We have also cared for her animals. It has been made very clear I logistically can't drop ours off and hers off on 2 different sides of town. We have also cared for her animals. She's a 15 to 20 minute one-way drive for us, and sometimes we made multiple trips a day to her home to care for the animals. She snapped at my husband over text. She was angry he had told me what she had said. My husband explained to her that I asked why, and that he does not lie to me, so he told me what was going on. He then had a bad feeling at that point and called mother-in-law, only to find out that my sister-in-law had called and told her we were pregnant. My husband is also livid she told my in-laws about our pregnancy before we could. We were planning on announcing the second one in a cute way, and she stole that from us. Am I the a-hole for saying something to my sister-in-law to spark off this craziness? Should I have let it be? Just wondering what this woman's plan was when she decided to have a kid. Not the a-hole. She had a husband but got divorced. Took all 5 animals they had at a time. One that I know she got after she was speaking with a lawyer to get divorced. Then continued to get more animals. I'm not sure on the plan either. All that on top of being on active duty? Shaking my head. Definition of biting off more than she can chew. The hubs and I discuss this exact thing regularly. It's impulsive and doesn't make sense. I have a few animals as well, but I work from home and I'm almost always at home. Lol. The animals are my quirky co-workers at this point. Good grief. I am a single mom with 0 family around. Having any help at all would be amazing to me. Your sister-in-law sounds so entitled. Let your mother-in-law handle her and you guys enjoy the new addition to your family, not the a-hole. Thanks. We are super happy. I respect the single mom struggle as I do it when a husband deploys. My house gets a little messy, my Orkie's grooming appointments get a little infrequent, but my kid is clean, fed, and happy, and I'm making it work. I generally don't ask others to help me because I also don't have a large support system here. Talk to the ombudsman at your husband's command. They'll help you meet other wives and set up a support system to help while your husband is deployed. That's their job.